Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. I hope you guys are doing awesome out there.
Hello and welcome.
So, time.
Time.
You know, we're going to be talking about the Yugas, and the Yugas are different ages. We go through this process of basically, you could view it as awakening and then kind of going into a sleeping state almost, where we kind of forget exactly who we are, where we came from, what we're even doing here.
We do, and it's a process that happens over and over.
It does. And so most of us in the West view time in this way. There's the past, and then we're in the present, and then there's the future. However, science is telling us now basically what we've been taught in the mystery traditions and out in the open in the East from time immemorial, so to speak, that's just an illusion. That is actually an illusion that happens because of our brains. Our brains are limited, and they can be awakened, and we can achieve a higher state of consciousness. It definitely takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of dedication. But this illusion of linear time is just that.
It is, and it's even really hard to explain. It's like things happen in a sequence. They're not really timed. That's the best way I can explain it. How do you explain it?
Well, there is, as we know now, we know, for instance, that our brain, although it may be operating in most people at a level where we're only sensing this one dimension at a time, our brain is even set up to operate multi-dimensionally. There have been scientific studies done that have shown that we might have the latent ability, even in this limited brain, to experience maybe 11 dimensions in the consciousness that we have right now. As we've talked about in other videos, this version of Homo sapiens, this version of humanity, is an altered version. It is an altered version, and it's basically one in which we have amnesia. We have forgotten exactly who and what we are. When we look at time, you could see linear time right there, going from the past to the future, and then you see cyclical time, and we see it as a circle. And so cyclical time, where patterns repeat, things repeat, consciousness itself repeats certain tendencies, is a little bit more accurate, but in reality, it's more of a spiral, because although we come to the same tendencies, the same aspects of energetics that we're experiencing, every time through the cycle it's a little bit different. It's unique. And each one of us, as we've said, is a unique expression of divinity, of source being omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. Well, that by that very definition, source, or God with the big G, has to reside in every single individual, every little bit of its creation.
It does. So we are all an expression of that source, because source wants to explore itself in every possible way.
And so, a good question came up, and somebody had said, well, you keep saying that the ultimate reality is we are one. Yes, in that, we are all pieces of source. We are all fractals of source. So again, we had talked about the fact that we live in this 3D reality, which is really, it's like a holographic projection from a different reality. And while we're in it, it feels very real. The experiences seem very real. And ultimately, what we are doing is we are on the path back to source. But it's a long path. And when you start looking into Hinduism, for instance, out of which Buddhism and Jainism, as well as some other philosophies and religions have developed, there are tremendous epochs of time. There's tremendous ages of time. Like, basically it's recognized that the lifespan of Brahma is tremendous, and Brahma is the creator god or the creative force. Now, there's a lot of different traditions as well. There's Vaishnavism, which basically puts Vishnu top, and Vishnu is the preserving force. And then there's Shaivism, which puts Shiva top, and Shiva is the destructive force in one sense, but also in that it's wiping away the old so that something new can come. But Shiva is also that which is not. So it's that which comes before the manifest. And we are living in a manifest, universe here, a three-dimensional manifest universe. So that can also be looked at as Shakti or the goddess. In Gnosticism, we have Sophia. It's interesting to see really how when we look at the mystery traditions, they go along very, very well with the Eastern line of thinking. And so we keep coming to these points in time, and you can see, like, say, 9 o'clock. Well, they're going to have certain characteristics because it's always, they're all 9 o'clock, but they're each one of them a little bit different. And so it is with the ages. And this is Sri Yugaswar, who was the guru of Yogananda. And Yogananda is highly revered because he brought this to the Western world. He was the first one to really bring the knowledge of the Hindu tradition. And Hindu means those of the Indus Valley, those people that were living there, to the West. And so his version of the Yugas is a good description. I think it is a good description. And he was a very, very high vibrational being. And I've shared with you guys that when he was close to leaving this density and moving upwards in vibration, his beloved student Yogananda was like 100 miles away, which in those days people were traveling, in different modes. A lot of times they were just walking, or they maybe had a horse and carriage, that type of thing, or perhaps some were able to take trains in certain areas. But he was far away, and he actually manifested a physical body through his meditation and appeared to Yogananda as a flesh and blood body, telling him that his time was short and he was going to be leaving, so, come back. And so Yogananda did. And that's just one of the abilities that we can have as we develop. And we have been in the Kali Yuga. So what are the yugas in the West? People often view time as linear, as we're saying, with the future being more evolved in the past. In India, however, time is viewed in a cyclical way, that people slowly evolve, then slowly devolve, only to slowly evolve again. And this is called the Yuga cycle. And it's divided into 4 different yugas or ages. The highest is the Satya Yuga, then the Treta Yuga, and then the Dwapara Yuga, and the least evolved is the Kali Yuga. The yugas are further broken up by whether they are ascending or descending, meaning whether we are in part of the cycle that's going up towards the higher ages or heading down towards the lower ones. The entire cycle takes 24,000 years. And so Sri Yugaswar, who we're looking at, a renowned Indian astrologer and a very self-realized soul, gives us in his book, The Holy Science, which I've done a video on before, some idea of what the different yugas are like. So the Kali Yuga, the age of materialism, during the Kali Yuga, humans are the least evolved, spiritually and intellectually. People are generally only able to comprehend material things and live lives of ignorance. Now, this is not the case for every single being, because there's always beings out there that are exceptional. And then we always have avatars that come, which is thought to be the incarnation of Source itself in one of its manifest forms. So, Vishnu incarnated, for instance, as Rama and Krishna, as well as others as well. And there have been many incarnations of Shiva as well. And they come at a time when we need light in the world. And so, many would view Christ as an avatar again. And there have been so many, Buddha as well. They're what we would call rishis in the Vedic tradition, or ascended masters now. So most written accounts of ancient knowledge was destroyed, as far as, which is what we have seen. There's been book burnings. We were covering that on the last video. We were talking about what the Catholic Church did in eliminating all the Gnostic and Essene teachings. The Essenes were mostly orally transmitted. Whatever didn't go along with their version of reality was destroyed. So people generally had very low willpower. They were pretty passively accepting of their fate, which was being controlled by these darker forces in the Kali Yuga. And religion is rigid, dogmatic, and intolerant. And boy, we have seen that throughout our history. Some people did know higher religious teachings, but they had to hide to avoid persecution. Of course, in every yuga, there are those souls who are, they're of a much higher source, and they are awake to the ways of the higher realms. And so they, as we had said, come and they help us. So near the end of the Ascendant Kali Yuga, which was 1700 AD according to Sri Yugatswar, the Renaissance happened, and a lot of knowledge that was lost was found. So we are heading into the Dwapara Yuga. So as we see here, you have the ascending and descending. And we leaving the Kali. We have left the Kali, believe it or not, even though it's still dark out there for sure with the dark forces.
It is, and they still control us in many different ways through our just society, through our culture, through our upbringing. These little things are still kind of like they're like Klingons. They just sort of stay around.
So the Dwapara Yuga, the age we are now living in, is referred to as the age of energy, because in this age we are better able to understand and harness energy than the Kali Yuga. In the Dwapara Yuga, technology is booming. All sorts of new religions, philosophies, and scientific discoveries are popping up. We now know that matter and energy are interchangeable. They're in fact the same thing. It's all about vibration and frequency. This is the age when we learn to transcend space and distance. We are already doing it somewhat with telephone, internet, high-speed transportation, and in the future we will probably discover the secret of instantaneous travel, allowing us to wander amongst the stars. Well, right there, that is basically what we were talking about when we talk about the Merkaba. Because with the Merkaba, we can go anywhere in space and time when that's fully developed. And that is exactly what they are trying to slow down, stop, and halt. Because then we are no longer bound the way that we are, unfortunately, right now. Now, we still have a long way to go. Dwapara Yuga people are still pretty much self-centered, and the motivation to achieve is usually still selfish. And there are higher ways of perceiving the universe than just reason. In Treta Yuga, we learn how to use our intuition. And so, as we could see these ages, the Dwapara is going to be 2,400 years according to Sri Yugatswar. Not everybody agrees on this timetable, too. There are other ideas out there. In the Treta Yuga, we recognize that everything is interconnected. We will have strong mental powers, such as telekinesis, mental telepathy, and the ability to manifest whatever we need. If there's any war, it will not be widespread. Most people will be peace-loving and compassionate. It will not necessarily be more technologically advanced than Dwapara, just more spiritually advanced. Being more spiritually advanced and able to manifest at will whatever we need, we may actually leave technology behind and choose to live more simply and naturally. And we see that when we see the remnants of some of these ancient civilizations, where obviously they had amazing technology, because you have massive stones that we couldn't even move today and so seamlessly put together. And so perhaps they were actually using their abilities to move things. So the big difference that separates the lower yugas, the two lower yugas, the Kali and Dwapara, from the upper two, is self-interest. People in Kali and Dwapara Yuga are often greedy and live only to help themselves and sometimes their family and friends. In the Treta and Satya Yuga, however, people recognize that we're all connected, and so work for the good of everyone as much as themselves. And the Satya Yuga is the age of spirit, and it's currently incomprehensible to us, as is the Treta Yuga. However, Sri Yugaswar does say in his book, the human intellect can comprehend all, even God and spirit beyond this visible world. This is the age where we'll be so spiritually advanced that God himself is part of our everyday experience. We will be able to see God in everyone and in everything. Our intuition will be completely developed, and we will have lives of happiness and natural simplicity. We will understand the nature of the universe and be able to communicate telepathically to anywhere in the world. There are many myths about this golden age in many different cultures. Some of the things that the myths share are that people are considered demigods, and they have the ability to fly and create things at will. People look young their entire lives and do not get diseases. People can communicate with animals and live in harmony with nature and each other. The weather is perfect. There's plenty of food. Everyone can communicate in one language. So the cycle of the yugas is still not accepted in Western science, but there is plenty of evidence for that is known to the West, but currently ignored. So, although that's changing as well. And when we look at the works of Richard Thompson, for instance, who was a great scientist in the Western tradition, he actually, wrote so many books uncovering these mysteries and going deep into it. And fascinating. Again, I would recommend Richard Thompson's works. Great stuff, and I have several of his books. So we are heading out of this darkness, and we are heading into much better times. And as we could see, the Kali and the Dwapara are smaller in time span than the Treta and the Satya. So, who are the ancient gods? Well, in effect, they are us, and that's something that we have forgotten.
And, I'm looking at all these yugas and I'm seeing that we're still kind of lingering here and there in all of them. So this is like a thing that kind of blends together. I don't think it's going to be a super fast thing, like an overnight thing. But I do feel like the powers that be are holding our vibration down by traumatizing. So if you traumatize, you're in the fight or flight mode, which can slow everything down. I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's so easy to focus on them. And, me, myself, I've focused on them a ton, trying to expose what's going on and wake more and more people up. But really, we have to shift that focus to the inside, because it's each of us awakening. And as each of us comes to this awakening, then we are these points of light on the planet that are starting to pull it up. And we will pull it up and speed up the transition heading towards the better yugas. The yugas, the time periods in which we are enlightened and we realize the oneness of all things. What we really should feel in some ways is, and it's not easy to feel compassion for your oppressors, so to speak. But ultimately, they are very, very much in the dark. And they are doing nothing but pulling themselves down into greater darkness by imposing this world order upon us. And so, again, there have been people out there that have said that they'll send prayers and everything, love and light, to these darker beings that are really in ignorance of the way things really should be. And it's not a bad idea at all, because in sending out love, we will basically start to turn that corner and lift up the vibrations of all those in this plane of existence.
And I feel right now our heart chakras are the biggest change in our whole energy body. So that emotion of love carries quite a lot of weight right now.
Most definitely. So guys, as always, we want to thank you for your support. We want to thank our Patreons, which we couldn't do it without the support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. As we've shared with you guys, the the Evolutionary, the bigger channel, has been demonetized like all year. And we've been working on growing this channel so we could keep doing this. And we do have plans for the bigger channel too. And, we're getting close to hopefully being able to unveil that for you guys. And it's going to be more practical ways of how do we transcend the system. One person, one family, perhaps one town or community at a time.
It's going to be a real blessing to be able to do this with you guys. So thank you for your support. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.